Hello and welcome to Competitive Crunch. My name is Spade and today I got big news from the Smogon front, as Smogon is taking the first steps towards creating new tiers, and so the topic of the day is underused beta. And first I have a disclaimer, as this is indeed underused beta. And beta in this context of course refers to something that is unfinished. It is unofficial, even by Smogon's own standards, and it is extremely preliminary. And this current underused beta tier is solely based on the usage of the first 3 months. And as you can imagine, as the games Pokemon X and Y have only been out for about 3 months, and Smogon's own ladder on Showdown has been up for even less, because obviously after the release, it took a while to set it up with all the new information. So this is simply based on the usage of first 3 months. And you can imagine that during these first 3 months, people are just using a lot of new Pokemon, some old ones, for the sake of using them. Not necessarily because they are best for the metagame. So, with that being said, there is of course a lot of fluctuation, and this is why Smogon didn't make the underused tier official. They made it unofficial because there is so much fluctuation that there is no point to create the UU tier at this time. But I'm certain there will be a lot of happy people trying out this new tier where you don't see these 5 Pokemon in every single battle, right? So that is all fine and dandy, and I think this would also be a nice way to showcase you how the tiers are actually created. I talked about this like about 20 episodes ago or so, but now I got a better example, so I thought I would quickly go through it again. So basically, this is the usage of the first 3 months of Smogon's metagame on Showdown. And if we scroll down, there will be a cutoff point right here on 3.4%. That is the, I think it's the same cutoff point for every tier in the future and in the past, what we are going to have. But 3.4 is the magical cutoff point for the OU in this case. And so the rest of these Pokemon will be underused. And with the usage that Smogon has been able to gather from the past 3 months, they are able to create this ban list for the underused tier. So they're able to set up a ladder where, besides the Uber's Pokemon, these Pokemon will also be banned. And then these Pokemon will create the new underused tier. And then these Pokemon will be fighting for the position which are going to be the top underused Pokemon. And after the next 3 months, we're going to have a usage from the UU tier, and then there will be the new 3.4 cutoff point, and from there Smogon is able to create the RU tier, because then again they're just able to make that cutoff and then rinse and repeat basically. So this is how tiers are created in a nutshell. I'm sure that was kind of confusing to a lot of new people. And I'm sure some people will be now saying that, Spade, there's a lot of broken Pokemon in here. What do you do about those? Well, in the future, Smogon will have a borderline tier, similar to what Smogon has for Ubers. They will have this borderline tier between the OU and the UU, because there's lots of Pokemon, like you can see right here, that you can right off the bat tell, oh, holy crap, these are way too broken for the underused metagame. So, but if they are not used in the overused tier, what in the world do you do with them? You put them to a borderline tier, which is the BL, and between all the future tiers there will be like BL2 and possibly BL3 and so on and so forth. But that is how the Smogon usage-based tier system works, and in my opinion it is still the best and really the only way to really create tiers, and it just works. So, let's actually just right now look at the underused Pokemon, which are currently, because it's definitely interesting to see how the current UU looks like. But again, I need to note that this is unofficial, this is beta, but you know, we can just try it out, which is really fun, because Smogon has the ladder indeed set up. It has been edited here too. So the UU beta is now playable on Pokemon Showdown. So you may want to try it out, or you may not want to try it out, because yeah, still a lot of fluctuation going on. But let's go through these Pokemon, what we got here. First we got Bisharp, which barely missed the OU cutoff this time around. But it's a really good anti-meta Pokemon at this new metagame, so that's why it's used quite a bit, but it didn't make it to OU this time, although it's again unofficial, so Bisharp may still rise on the upcoming months. So, and all of these may rise. So that is the reason why Smogon is going to wait until they create the official UU list. But Bisharp is there, mainly just better works in the OU because of the sticky web and the better steel dark coverage. But you know, who knows? Maybe it will never make to the OU tier, much like in the last generation. Then we got Jellicent. You know, with the fact that we don't need spin blockers that much because everybody's using defog, that may hurt Jellicent's usage. And that's why that thing is UU. I wouldn't honestly see it too broken for the UU tier, especially with all the powerhouses that we got at the moment. But we shall see. Then we got Hydreigon here, and Hydreigon definitely took a hit. It's really understandable why it isn't. It's not used at the moment because you know Fairy types mainly just really hurt it. It has now 4 times weakness to Fairy, and in the previous generation, as Hydreigon was practically uncounterable because of its nature and possibility of going mixed. It cannot do that so easily because usually the best way of going mixed was just slapping Outrage in there. But as you got Fairy types that are immune to Outrage and are really just specially defensive, Hydreigon has really big trouble getting past all those Fairy types. So that is what really hurt Hydreigon, and that's why it's not really used that much at the moment. Perhaps it will rise, but who knows. And then we got Celebi. In the previous generation, it was really a good Pokemon to deal with rain teams, and obviously there's no perma-rain anymore, so Celebi is not needed that much. Although it's still a good anti-meta Pokemon, and definitely when you look at the usage stats here, Rotom Wash is the #1 used Pokemon, and Celebi is a pretty solid counter, or a pretty, let's call it a check, because there's hipsters who are using Signal Beam to deal with Celebis with their Rotom, so there's that. It's not a counter, but it's a solid check in most of the cases. But mainly the lack of perma-rain is because the reason why Celebi is not used that much. Then there's Scolipede. It's a really cool baton passer in this generation with the speed boost and everything. But you know, it's still, you know, baton passing in general is, you know, overall just a gimmick. So how far is that going to take Scolipede? Who knows, but currently it is not used enough for the OU tier. Then there is Latias, which also got hurt by the presence of Fairy types, especially like one of the best sets that you could run on Latias was arguably the Sub-Palm Mind with like Roost and Mono Attack being Dragon Pulse, or perhaps over Sub you could have like Hidden Power not Fairy, but Fire. And that set is not really that good because of the Fairy types in this generation. So that really hurts Latias. Perhaps in the UU tier it will be used more offensively, but you know, Latios just outclasses it at the moment, so that's why Latias is not really used that much. And then we have Noivern, and that thing, it's a fast dragon, but it doesn't hit as hard as other dragons, so I guess that's why it's not used that much. It had some good hype coming into Generation 6, but at the moment it is just barely short from the OU tier. And then we got the Deoxys brothers here. I would definitely imagine these things, potentially both of them, getting banned, especially Deoxyspeed. But currently the problem is that because there's defog, and because these two enjoy setting up entry hazards, and because there's a way to get rid of entry hazards so easily, they're not as useful as they were in the past, but they are still really good, especially coupled with Hyper Offense. But of course, Hyper Offense is, you know, just one playstyle out of many, and because of that, Deoxys brothers are not used that much, and they are currently in the underused tier, being a big trouble. But I would definitely see Deoxyspeed getting like banned in the future, and possibly even Deoxys Defense, because with these two, you're so easily able to set up entry hazards and block your opposing entry hazard setters and deal with the rapid spinners and defog users. So yeah, like I talked about these already in the other video I made about the former Ubers, I would definitely see these Pokemon getting the ban hammers. So I'm sure once the official list comes, and if these guys will still not find the usage in OU, they will be dealt with. And Deoxyspeed, I believe, already is on the list of being suspect tested. It's not gonna happen yet, but I'm sure soon in the future. But then we got, what, Jolteon is here, and I guess the lack of Permarain kind of hurts that too. It's not... I guess Jolteon still works as a solid, fast electric type Pokemon in the OU tier, but you know, I'm sure it would be alright in the underused tier 2, in my opinion. And if we want to talk about pokes that could be potentially like doing alright, like at this moment, like Deoxys Brothers, I definitely see these things getting the ban hammer, but something like Latias, if you had things like Celebi to deal with them, and things like Bisharp even, and, you know, I guess Hydreigon not that much. But if you have things to, because this is a whole new tier. We don't know if these Pokemon are actually that broken until we, you know, try them out in the tier itself. But I guess some would say that Latias would be way too broken. But especially if you have something like Celebi there to deal with it, it may not be the case. But then again, if there's only Celebi, if there's not more things to deal with them, you know, then that may just mean that, you know, Latias may end up getting the ban hammer in the future if it is not used enough in the OU tier. And I think the same thing would go for Keldeo, because Keldeo kind of lost a lot. I will go through these two in a moment, but Keldeo kind of lost a lot in this generation because there's no Permarain, so it cannot spam Choice Specs, Hydro Pump as easily. It can still do that, but it's not as powerful as it used to be, because Permarain really made it great. And, you know, if there's Pokemon like Celebi to stop, if there's a Pokemon like Celebi to stop Keldeo, it may just not be too broken. But then again, if there's only Celebi to deal with Keldeo, then, you know, it may just end up getting the ban hammer. But who knows, like, something like Mega Blastoise may be able to deal with Keldeo to an extent, I guess. Although, like, meh. Oh, well, we can all argue about it. And I guess Fairy types would, especially defensive Fairy types, resisting the Sacred Sword and being especially defensive, like Florges, might be able to deal with Keldeo. Who knows? Perhaps, maybe not, maybe yes. But, you know, it's weak to Fairy types too, so that's the thing. There might be ways to actually deal with Keldeo better now. And because Keldeo is not that useful in the OU tier, who knows what's going to happen. But that's just my 2 cents. And there was Vaporeon and Heracross. Vaporeon, like, there's other bulky warriors that are used more at this moment, so not really surprising seeing Vaporeon this low. And then Heracross, the thing is, it has the Mega Evolution, but it's like, the speed is the real problem. But definitely, I would imagine this thing being way too powerful in the UU tier, being an awesome wall breaker and having all those multiple times hitting moves and everything. So, personally, I would see this thing being too powerful for the UU metagame, but we'll have to wait and see on that, how everything works out. Blastoise, kind of briefly already mentioned, but like, it was UU last generation, and the Mega Blastoise honestly didn't do that much to it. Like, you know, it's a great addition, but it loses on leftovers recovery, and, you know, it's slightly more powerful. It's like a good offensive spinner, but Blastoise was a solid UU Pokemon last generation, so I would imagine him being one still in this gen. Then there's Gardevoir. I guess the Mega Evolution for that didn't do enough for it to be OU, honestly. You know, it isn't that good. I guess Gardevoir would be another way to deal with Latias. So if you have enough things to deal with, like broken Pokemon, possibly broken Pokemon, such as Latias, you know, it may just end up staying in the UU, at least for the time being, even after the official lists come out. Again, if the usage just keeps up. And what else interesting things? Politoed and Gastrodon here, 2 Pokemon that really hurt when the weather got nerfed. Politoed obviously because no Permarain, and Gastrodon because it was such a great anti-weather rain stop, a full stop to most rain spammers that you know, you can't thunder it, you can't hydro pump it, you can't scald it. Gastrodon is here to take all those hits, so Gastrodon was used because of that a lot of last generation, and because it no longer has that niche to wall rain teams, perma-rain teams, it's not used that much. Then we got Ditto, the same gimmick as always, copying everything, not really much to say about it. We shall see if Ditto is still gonna be never used like it was in the previous generation, but you have to take into account Ditto is only as good as the Pokemon or the opposing team, so it's always so unreliable to use Ditto because you never know what you're going to be up against. So it's a gimmicky Pokemon, there's no solid strategy for it, but it is still kind of the ultimate revenge killer with Choice Scarf, and it's a good Pokemon for any team, but it's still a gimmick, that's why it's not really used that much. Then we got the Florges. There's so many specially defensive fairies, like I think Sylveon, is Sylveon in the OU tier actually? If I can take a look at this, yeah, there we go. Sylveon has enough usage for the OU, but Florges doesn't. So there's a lot of competition between the specially defensive fairy types. There's also the Adamantis. I would imagine that thing is not in the OU. So like right now it looks like that Sylveon is winning the race between all the specially defensive fairy types that were introduced. Sylveon, Florges, Adamantis, all of them are so similar. They also can Wish Pass, and I guess they can Calm Mind and stuff like that. But Sylveon looks to be taking the cake when it comes to these three specially defensive fairy types. Then there's Medicham. I would imagine this thing would be definitely too powerful. These two right here, really powerful physical attackers. Medicham with its Mega Evolution, pure power. It wall breaks just everything, has awesome coverage. And then there's Kieran Black that doesn't have such awesome coverage, but you know, it's still Kieran Black, 170 base attack, and it can still go mixed, which is what really makes it dangerous. Sub 3 attacks, I think it's gonna be pretty awesome still. And then Scarfer and Band User, I would imagine. You know, it does get Terravolt and which works like Mold Breaker, so it could hit those Rotoms, but you know, it's still Kieran Black. It has been kind of dissed in the previous generation, and you know, because people are just using a lot of other Pokemon, they are disregarding Kieran Black, which is a shame. But you know, it's a shame for all these Pokemon because, again, or people are just using Pokemon for the sake of using them, or not because they would necessarily be good for the metagame. I'm not entirely certain if Kieran Black would be good for this metagame, but in my opinion, it would be a great anti-meta Pokemon. Getting rid of Rotom Ws and setting up subs, and then having that great coverage to really hit a lot of Pokemon. So there's that. Those are my 2 cents on Kieran Black. And the Chandelure, it was a pretty solid underused Pokemon in the previous generation, and in this gen it has been confirmed that it doesn't get Shadow Tag anymore, so I would imagine it's still being a solid UU Mon. Then we have Mega Manectric, or just regular Manectric, and obviously it's being used because of the Mega Form. And it does have like 135 base speed and special attack, was it? I think so. So that's pretty solid, but you know, it's still kind of a mediocre Pokemon, and there are things like Jolteon that are used more at the moment. So, and you know, the problem with the Mega Pokemon, as always, is the fact that they cannot be using any other items, so that kind of limits Mega Manectric too. So, but honestly, I would see this thing as a solid UU Pokemon this generation, because it's definitely progress from regular Manectric. It's a lot better. Then we got Magnezone. I guess the trapping of steel types is not that popular at the moment, so Magnezone is just not used because it's always for trapping steel types. But I'm sure it will find more usage if people feel like they need to be trapping steel types, but we shall see. Then we got Manaphy. You could definitely imagine this thing being a solid overused Pokemon. The lack of rain obviously hurts it, but you know, it's still Manaphy. You can, in one turn, you can get +3 special attack with the Tail Glow, and it's a great Calm Minder, and you could have it as a rain supporter too. I've been trying it out, and I think having Manaphy with Rain Dance is pretty cool because you can still abuse rest that way, but it's definitely a lot more limited. That's why it's not used that much. But I would definitely imagine that in the future, once people, you know, stop using random Pokemon and actually just trying out things that would be actually good for the metagame, I'm sure they will find Manaphy, and Manaphy will rise in the usage, I would think. Then there's Absol. I guess the Mega Absol doesn't get it too far. Like, it's a great Pokemon, but you know, Absol to begin with is kind of mediocre, so that's why, you know, not seen that much, I guess. Got Kingdra there. Kingdra has the new gimmick with the focus energy and the whatever critical hits ratio racing item, like the scope lens or whatever, and it can do the Draco Meteor, Hydro Pump spam and crit every time, so that's a pretty cool gimmick. But you know, Kingdra has kind of been a solid UU Pokemon, so, and especially with the lack of Permarain, you know, it's still gonna be kind of a gimmick to see in the overused tier. Then we got the Digger Speed dropping down here. It's kind of interesting the typing that Digger Speed has, but like if you want to compare it to Azumarill, which you maybe shouldn't do, you know, it does hit harder and it has the unique normal ground typing, but you know, it still has like, its defenses aren't like, it has pretty decent defenses. It's a bit faster than if we want to compare it to Azumarill. Again, we shouldn't do that, but you know, Digger Speed is still, I don't know, I still kind of find it as a gimmick, and you know, because the normal ground typing just defensively isn't that good, so it doesn't enjoy like switching into hits like too much if you again want to compare it to Azumarill, because water and fairy typing is like really great for it. But again, we shouldn't compare it because they still work extremely differently. They are two different Pokemon, different typing, different stats, and different everything, but they just share huge power. That's why people compare them with each other, but we shouldn't. But Digger Speed is still, you know, kind of a gimmick, but I would imagine this thing being a solid UU Pokemon wall breaker. But the normal ground coverage is just kind of weird. We shall see if it gets something like, does it get a good fighting type move? I don't know, I haven't used it so much. Does it get superpower? I don't think so. Anyways, rambling and moving on. We got Chansey. I guess Blissey is the one. Is Blissey OU? Yes, it is. So Blissey is used more apparently at the moment. So that explains our good old Chansey right here. Then we got good old Metagross here, which really got hurt by the Steel nerf in this generation, having 4 weaknesses instead of 2. That's why it's kind of down in the UU tier, and I would imagine it will find its new place over there. And then good old Haxorus. Again, I guess it kind of got hurt by the fairy types in this generation. It has kind of been always in the previous generation too, kind of the mediocre dragon. There's more powerful things like Garchomp that are faster to begin with, and really it's the base speed that really hurts Haxorus, so not really surprising to see it this low. And there's Slowbro, that has been a solid UU Pokemon. Reuniclus, perhaps it's going to find its new place in the UU tier, although it's a really great sturdy Pokemon, Calm Mind, Trick Room setter, so we shall see what's going to happen in that. Then we got Thundurus Therian. This would definitely seem like a really broken Pokemon in the underused tier, but because we have Thundurus again that got banned in the previous generation, people are focusing their usage on the regular Thundurus, and that is why Thundurus Therian is not being used. Then we've got Malamar. I would imagine this thing would be a solid UU Pokemon because the contrary superpower is not really cutting it in the OU tier. It's still kind of a gimmick, and it's not really that great because Malamar overall it has really mediocre stats. So there's that. Then we got Umbreon, that's a solid UU Pokemon, as is Crobat, although I would imagine Crobat getting more usage with the Defog and the how useful poison typing could be in this generation, and you know, it's one of the fastest Defog users, so I would imagine that being pretty cool thing for Crobat, and I would imagine that would get more usage. But then again, when it comes to Defog users, people are more using just the Mandibuzz at the moment. That's like one of the main Defog users that you see in this metagame. Then we got Hippowdon, and that Pokemon was underused for a little bit in the previous generation, and now that there's no Perma Sand, I would imagine Hippowdon could find its place in the underused metagame. However, is it too bulky for the UU tier? Once it in the future balances out, perhaps, maybe, we shall see. But obviously, when it comes to sand, people are just, I guess, using, you know, Tyranitar. Although that's not really a good reason, again, because there's no Perma Sand, so there is that. But yeah, Hippowdon has been in the UU tier. We shall see what's gonna happen to it. Arcanine, solid UU Pokemon in the past. Then we got Groudon, which found some new toys in this generation, spamming that knockoff, also annoying. And also got Aqua Jet in this generation, so kind of works in a similar way as Azumarill does. And perhaps the usage of Azumarill is kind of what's hurting Groudon from getting more usage in the OU tier, I would imagine. But Groudon has definitely gotten a buff, that's why it's used, this much. Then we got the Rotom of the UU tier, Rotom Heat, and I think that would still be a solid underused Pokemon. Then Aggron, that got a Mega Evolution. Perhaps with the Mega Evolution it could remain in the UU tier. The pure Steel typing is definitely a buff because it's not 4 times weak to ground and fighting. That is what really hurt Aggron in the first place. That's why you don't really see it anywhere, because the 4 times weakness, no matter how high its defense is, it still gets destroyed by all those powerful earthquakes and close combat. So, and now with the Mega Evolution, it could prove to be more useful. But we shall see. We shall see. Zapdos, solid UU Pokemon, as is Porygon 2. Ninetales obviously dropping down because of the lack of perma weather again. So there's that. Tornadus Therian also getting hurt by the fact that there's no perma rain around. Last gen it was obviously a really powerful and broken Pokemon as he got banned, but now Hurricane got nerfed, Hidden Power got nerfed, although I guess Tornadus didn't rely on Hidden Power that much, but it could still do that. But mainly the Hurricane nerf and the lack of perma rain is what hurt Tornadus Therian, why it's not really used that much, but it's still, and I guess, in the previous generation it lived in its own speed tier, 121, but now there are things like Noivern and Greninja that are faster by it naturally, and I believe a few other things too. So overall, Tornadus Therian not that useful in the current generation, but it's still a nuisance. It has Heat Wave and Focus Blast and that Hurricane, and it can just U-turn around and keep the regenerator going and never die. So it's definitely an annoying Pokemon, but we shall see how it's going to be doing in this new metagame. At the moment, not so well. Then we got Hawlucha. This Pokemon I would see as a pretty solid UU, if not RU Pokemon. You haven't really seen much of this Pokemon. Like, it has the Unburden, and I really wanted to try out like Unburden Acrobatics with this thing, but since there's no Flying Gem, that kind of sucks at this moment. Perhaps you could do something gimmicky like Lychee Berry or something, but that would be even more gimmicky as opposed to something like Flying Gem Acrobatics. But yeah, I would definitely see this Pokemon as a lower tier gimmick. And since I've gone through up to 100 Pokemon from, where did we start? 54. I think we could end up this episode. Let's see if there's any other interesting Pokemon. There's Mew here, Nidoking, solid UU Pokemon, Machamp, Zygarde. That Pokemon is not really, even despite its legendary status, it's not really getting usage because it's just kind of weird. Was it 99 base speed or what? Like, it was, the base speed wasn't, like, overall the thing with Zygarde, it's not offensively that good. It's pretty bulky, but offensively it's not that great. And you have like other arguably better ground dragons like Garchomp, I guess. But again, this Pokemon works kind of differently because it has Dragon Dance, it does have Coil to boost up, and also Extreme Speed, then EQ and Outrage for coverage, so that's pretty awesome. But it's still the mediocre offensive stats that really hurt the Zygarde and its usage. We shall see, will it find its place in the future underused here. And there's Victini, one of my favorites. Really want to try that Pokemon out. Want to get that on Wi-Fi and spam that we create. Although it didn't look as awesome as I would have imagined, because I watched that animation of we create on YouTube and I was kind of disappointed. I mean, disappointed by a lot of animations, but that is what we are not talking about today. But since I have rambled on for quite some time now, I think I'm gonna end up the episode. But this is the first look at the initial UU Pokemon. Let me know what you think. And again, I need to remind you that this is only the underused beta tier. Smogon, I'm not sure if they're gonna spend another 3 months. Perhaps they will, and gain the usage from the following 3 months, as there is not that much fluctuation. People are finally starting to find their places for the Pokemon, what they actually want to use, what Pokemon are actually good for the metagame. So there is that, and I've just seen a lot of Pokemon just freaking out by seeing all these powerful Pokemon in the UU tier, and a lot of people just since many people are just have just gotten used to the Gen 5 UU, they freak out seeing all these Pokemon in the UU tier, even though this is the UU of Gen 6 and it is the beta tier that hasn't even existed for even a week as of now, as I'm recording and uploading this. So that is something that you need to take into account, but people are still disregarding it because they just read underused and they associate underused with Gen 5 UU instead of as a completely new thing, which is still on beta. But that's what people do, and they freak out. And hopefully this helped you understand more of the tiers and the shenanigans and what is up to come with the Smogon tiers. So this is the beta tier, which you can now play on Showdown server if you so desire. It is arguably a mixed bag of broken things, and it is quite unbalanced, but it's nice that they did at least set up this ladder for us, even though it's unofficial, but it's definitely fun to try out. So I would recommend you to at least try it out if you do have a Showdown account. But with that being said, I will conclude this episode, and perhaps next time maybe I will look into the usage stats of the OU of December, perhaps. But I thought the underused tier topic would be kind of interesting because it's something new at the moment, something really refreshing that's going on. Big news from the Smogon front, so I thought I would do this one first. So now I will stop rambling and repeating myself, and I will check you guys next time. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Leave topics that I could possibly do in the future. I have a few in mind, but you are of course always free to leave me more suggestions, and I will read them and I will consider them, and I will check you guys next time. Until then, this is Spade signing out. Peace!